So many women globally struggling with osteoporosis. Not just women, so many people generally due to inflammation. Welcome to episode number 89 of the Sleep Whisperer podcast, and we're speaking on such an important topic today, which is bone health, osteoporosis, and sleep. Susan Brady brings a rich diversity of experience and knowledge to the healthcare profession. As a young physical therapist, she quickly began to see how important taking a holistic health approach is to achieving optimal healing and full recovery. That sparked Susan's interest in pursuing advanced degree in integrative health and nutrition. With her strong background in nutrition and musculoskeletal disorders, Susan has focused her practice for the last several years on osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, and other conditions impacting healthy aging. She believes that optimizing gut health, controlling inflammation, reducing stress, and achieving adequate exercise and healing sleep are the most effective ways to enhance overall health and well-being. When not working with clients on their health goals, Susan is out hiking up mountains, paddle boarding across ponds, and sailing the high seas. Susan is the proud mother of two amazing children and a blind dog that joins her on all of her adventures. In this episode, we go deep into bone health, speaking about how sleep impacts bone health. Is it more severe in postmenopausal women, and is taking a calcium supplement the only answer? What are the root causes behind osteoporosis, and what are some of the approaches that help to manage it so that you can achieve overall healthy aging? Gratitude is the core of improving your resilience to stress. By offering gratitude, we create a ripple effect deep within which subtly influences our mind to feel calm. Gratitude is the key to reducing restlessness, frustration, and a hyper-alert mind, promoting the balanced and harmonious energy that we need to sleep well. Take a listen also to the meditation on episode 88 in case you missed it. Hey everyone, I'm Deepa, Allied Functional Medicine Practitioner, author and yogini, and you're listening to the Sleep Whisperer podcast, the only sleep podcast with conversations and meditations. I'm on a mission to share profoundly insightful sleep conversations with global visionaries that merge together functional medicine and ancient wisdom. Breathe in bliss through weekly guided meditations and let yourself enter the land of dreams. Together, let's unravel the pieces, get to the roots, and understand the right tools to transform your sleep completely. Through this podcast, I want you to dream the best version of yourself. It's time to regain hope and begin your sleep journey. Susan, it's such a pleasure to have you here today. And we were just having a little chat before our actual conversation here. And in that 1 minute, I think you took my breath away in what you spoke about. So I can't wait to go into this very important subject, because I think so many people, women especially, are so vulnerable to this. And we're talking about bone health, osteoporosis, and sleep. And I can't wait for you to share not just the connections between sleep and bone health, but really this has been one subject that I will say I feel very vulnerable with in terms of clients, especially the postmenopausal women's population, which is, I really think, clueless about how to safeguard
your bone health once you've dropped in estrogen levels. So I would like us to go a little deeper, and I might pick your brains more specifically about women's health. But tell me about how did you get into this specific area of expertise?
Well, it's interesting. I graduated from physical therapy school with a master's of physical therapist in 1989, so 32 years ago. And I was working for a renowned rheumatologist in Beverly Hills, California. And it was really interesting. I had a patient that came in and she would say, "Hey, every time I eat sugar or wheat, my rheumatoid arthritis flares up. I get swelling, I get pain in my joints, I don't feel well." Now, this was 1990, okay? So 30 years ago, before any of us really knew the connections between food and health, and especially sugar and gluten and health. And so we all just like poo-pooed, or like, yeah, whatever. Um, and then she went on and took herself off sugars and wheat, and she got better. And then I lost a patient because she didn't need me anymore. So that's what really sparked my interest in the nutrition aspect of our health. And I went on just to, do my own dabbling and learning about nutrition and things like that. And then a little bit later, I just wanted to dive more into holistic health in general. So I went to a program here in Washington, D.C. called Capital University of Integrative Medicine. And I got what's called a doctor of integrative medicine. And what I took away from that again was, the importance of taking a holistic approach to all aspects of health. And then I went on and got a postmaster's in nutrition and integrative health, and opened up an integrative nutritional practice. And then when I was in practice, and so now we're probably in the mid 2000s, 27, I mean, 2007, I started to get a lot of women coming into my practice who had been diagnosed with osteoporosis. The doctor wanted to put them on medications. They started to, go to Dr. Google and see that, some of these medications had, pretty scary side effects, and they wanted to take a more natural approach. And, it was interesting. I was just getting, one client after another with the same issue. So I started to look into it a little bit more. But then I got this one specific client who had been on osteoporosis medications for 10 years, which is, as we know, now we know, way too long to be on this specific type of medication. And she suffered two hip fractures in 6 months. And there is some evidence to think that this particular medication may have contributed to those hip fractures. So that's when I just was like, okay, there's got to be something better than this. So that's when I really took a deep dive into the literature and started looking at, all aspects of osteoporosis and everything that goes into keeping our bones strong and healthy. And that's when I developed what I call my bones method. And bones is an acronym. B stands for balanced nutrition, O for optimized digestion, N for nurture the soul, and that's where the sleep comes in, E essential exercise, and then S smart supplementation. So now when I'm, evaluating any patient, this is kind of the method that I go through. I'm looking at their nutrition. You could be eating the best diet in the whole world, but if then you're not digesting, you're not getting any of those nutrients to your bones or any cell in your body. And then, this is a sleep podcast. And of course, sleep and stress are so important to the bones. Obviously, you need exercise. Exercise is very essential for strengthening the bones. And then smart supplementation. And supplementation goes way beyond just calcium and vitamin D. Our bones need over 21 different vitamins and minerals and nutrients to stay strong. So somebody that's just taking calcium and vitamin D, that's just only one small piece of the puzzle. So that's kind of, the approach I take. The initial consult that I do goes through all of these different aspects of it. And then we really prioritize and focus on, what needs to be done first to help somebody with their bones.
I'm so glad you done all the work for us, Susan, because first of all, your acronym sounds amazing, and I would love for you to go in depth into all those areas. And I already have questions for you in each of those areas, but I'm going to hold my questions until we come to each of those. So if you could first just walk us through all of those, because I know that what you mentioned about bone health being much more than just vitamin D and calcium, that's such a profound statement, because that's really what it is perceived as today. Because most often you'll get women who are postmenopausal who are just told to take calcium supplementation, sometimes not even vitamin D. And they just, that's it. They think they've insured themselves against osteoporosis. And sadly, that's not the case. I wish it were that simple for the world of women out there. But let's jump into bones and just break that down deeply.
So, number one, balanced nutrition. And, we go through so many different diets in this country, or around the world, from all these fad diets like keto diet and paleo diet and this diet and that diet. And, I think one diet is very individual for people. I think that we all are very different in our nutrient needs and the way that we metabolize foods, and we all need different diets. But I would say that, there are some really key things that our bones need. And yes, our bones need calcium. But a lot of people can't tolerate dairy. And in fact, if you look around the world, oftentimes the countries that actually consume the most dairy have the greatest amount of osteoporosis, because for some people, dairy can be very inflammatory and can create intolerances and interrupt or disrupt digestion. And so, I think number one, getting some of your calcium from more of your leafy greens, from spinach and kale and arugula and bok choy. Bok choy has got to be one of my favorite greens.
And I must stop you for a second, Susan, because this is such a common question that I get from everybody, that when I tell them to remove the dairy, even as just part of an first step elimination to reduce systemic inflammation. And the first thing is that, but where do I get my calcium? Is just eating greens enough? So could you go a little bit deeper into where can we get rich sources of calcium? And more than that, when you mentioned the arugula, and I mean, I love all of that, but how much would we typically need to ensure that we've given our body a optimal level of calcium?
Mm-hmm. Well, you're going to get calcium from your leafy greens. You're also going to get calcium from your nuts and seeds. So things like sesame seeds have a lot of calcium in them. Also, chia seeds are very high in calcium. Quinoa. So, all of these, there's so many different plant-based sources of calcium. So what I do, and it kind of jumps forward a little bit to supplementation, is you need to find out how much calcium somebody is getting in their diet. And I like people to aim usually 600 to 800 milligrams of calcium in their diet. And then if we need to supplement, we can supplement then to bring people up to about 1,000, 1,200 milligrams of calcium. So sardines with the bones have a lot of calcium in them, but typically I want people to get at least 2 to 3 cups of leafy greens a day. And if they can get that, then oftentimes they're getting enough calcium, because, and I don't know the milligrams off the top of my head, but even like 1 cup of kale, you're getting, several hundred milligrams of calcium a day in that. So, what I do is I just go to Siri, how much calcium is in this food? And then I can often just calculate in somebody's diet. So I always look at somebody's diet. So, calcium is really important. Your leafy greens are really important. And all of your fruits and vegetables are important because that's where so many of our nutrients come from. That's where our vitamins come from. So many of our minerals come from. And, we want to go beyond calcium. We have to look at things like magnesium and zinc and boron and so many of these other nutrients, manganese, so important. And so many of those do come from our vegetables. And then on top of that, all of our fruits and vegetables have these amazing carotenoids and polyphenols that are very anti-inflammatory and have wonderful antioxidant properties to it. And the thing is that our bones actually are affected by systemic inflammation and by oxidative stress. So our bones are constantly turning over. You're laying down new bone and you're sloughing off old bone. And that happens through two specific bone cells. One are called osteoblasts that lay down new bone, and the other one is called osteoclasts. And those actually resorb the old bone. And we actually want that bone resorption because those are old bone, they're no longer viable, they're fragile. And so the body wants to get rid of those, but it wants to lay down new bone on top of it. And when we have an imbalance and we have, the too many osteoclasts or the osteoclasts are stimulated, then you have more bone resorption or bone loss than you do bone formation. So inflammation, oxidative stress, they all stimulate these osteoclasts and create bone loss. So making sure that you're eating foods that are high in anti-inflammatories and antioxidants to, squelch that systemic inflammation and not allow systemic inflammation is really important. So again, fruits and vegetables, in my opinion, should be the foundation of everybody's diet. But our bones actually also need proteins. And, you can get enough protein through a vegetarian diet. It takes a little bit more because you really got to make sure that you're getting adequate protein. And one of the things that happens as we age is we actually need more protein to maintain muscle mass and maintain our bones. And so I have a little formula, but it kind of comes out to about half your body weight in protein a day. So for somebody that is 130 pounds, we're looking at 65 grams of protein a day. That's a lot of protein. So you really do need to be very careful about getting enough protein in your diet as well. Healthy fats, obviously fats are just so important. And for the longest time, we were so fat phobic, around the world that nobody wanted to eat fat, myself included. I mean, I used to be like a no fat person. And yet we know how important fats are, especially your fats from omega-3 fatty acids. So, from your fatty fish and chia seeds and walnuts, all of those have those omega-3 fatty acids, which are really, really important for inflammation and making sure you don't get excessive inflammation. And then, believe it or not, olive oil, there's been a ton of information on olive oil and bone health. And several studies have shown that people, postmenopausal women that consume more olive oil, 3 to 4 tablespoons a day, have better bone density. And, just to kind of round it out, when we're looking at, what is the best diet for osteoporosis, I generally start with the foundation of the Mediterranean diet. And the Mediterranean diet, time and time again, has been shown to be the best for bone health. And they do think it is the consumption of olive oil in the Mediterranean diet which helps with the bones. But then on top of that, you are removing, all of your processed foods and Deepa, I don't have to tell you how bad all these processed foods are for us. all the bad fats that come in with them, and just void of any nutrients, and they create inflammation in the body.
And
And
sometimes,
can really,
Susan, when you mentioned the processed food, I was going to tell you that they come with this label of fortified for bone health. And I mean, a lot of people sadly actually believe that is the case, and that they're ensuring their bone health when they buy these fortified processed foods. But what you're always bringing the attention back to is what I say, the just a whole foods. And I really appreciate you talking about the fact that you can possibly get enough protein with a vegetarian diet, because a lot of my guests don't speak about that. And I think given that such a large level of our population is slowly transitioning towards a plant centric or plant based diet, it's great that you said we just need to bring a little extra attention. But I think that's the key phrase, because a lot of people turn plant based and they don't put that extra attention on getting ample protein, and then they slowly start to see it as joint pain and muscle fatigue and not being able to hold themselves through exercise. So I really want to appreciate, and I know before you go into the other parts of your acronym, I do want to get your thoughts on this, and I'd like you to weave this in for us right through our conversation going forward, which is, if somebody is already diagnosed with osteoporosis or rheumatoid arthritis or anything which is affecting their joints or bones, do you feel sometimes they believe that their body has already been damaged, that it can never be repaired fully? Do you feel that's the case, or do you feel that they can come back to a state of radiant health?
yeah. Oh, I think anybody can come back to a state of radiant, vibrant health. I mean, our body is designed to heal itself, and you just have to give it the right tools for it to do that. And one of those tools is nutrition. And what's really interesting is, everybody bases bone health on these DEXA scans, okay? And the DEXA scans measure bone density. But you also have bone quality, okay? So you can have very dense bone, but poor structure, poor quality. And that bone is going to be just as fragile as somebody that has less dense bone. And you can have less dense bone, but it can be of great quality. And what makes that quality and that structure are things like nutrition and sleep and decreasing inflammation and getting enough exercise. Unfortunately, we don't have great ways to measure bone quality at this time. There is something called the trabecular bone score, which is just starting to be looked at. And we have a couple places here in Washington, D.C. that will do that. And that looks at more bone quality rather than bone density. And if you look at women who predominantly have osteoporosis, they're thin. They are thin women. So you just take a look at their wrist, and they were born with small bones. So right from the get-go, they're going to have less bone density than a man who is, 6'2" and weighs 200 pounds. He's just going to have more bone density because basically his bones have had to carry his frame, whereas a thin 110-pound female's only been having to carry that frame. So I do think there's so much that we can do to help improve the bone quality. And just a quick example, a 52-year-old female with osteopenia, so not even osteoporosis, but the beginnings of bone loss. She had a sedentary job. She very, very high stress job, drank a lot of alcohol, never got any exercise. She fractured 3 bones in 1 year. On the other hand, I had this 75-year-old woman with full-blown osteoporosis, exercised, ate right, took care of herself, fell down a flight of stairs, and didn't break a bone. So just because you've been diagnosed with osteoporosis doesn't mean that you're this fragile little butterfly that's going to break with a puff, somebody sitting on you, right? There's so much we can do, and muscle mass and good muscle mass is also really important, and that's part of making sure that you're doing the exercise. One of the most common questions that I get is, can you reverse bone loss? And in my practice, and I've been doing this for about 8, 9, 10 years now, I've never seen a true reversal of bone loss. What I've seen is stabilizing so that you don't lose more bone. And I think, bone mass actually begins in our adolescent years. That's when we build bone. And we only build bone until about 24 years old in women. And you reach what's called peak bone mass. And you're never going to have any more bone than that the rest of your life. So if you didn't build that bone as an adolescent child, as an adolescent girl, then when you go through menopause, and everyone is going to lose bone mass during menopause because estrogen protects our bones for most of our life. And then when we lose that estrogen and you start to lose bone, if you've reached that peak bone mass and you lose bone, you're okay. But if you never reach that peak bone mass because of poor lifestyle or illness or something as a younger child, then when you lose that mass and you go through menopause, it kind of sets you up for osteoporosis. But what I think I really want to get across is it's not all about bone density. It's also about bone quality. And that is the one thing that we can change with appropriate lifestyle.
Beautiful, Susan. I think you just put that so correctly. And I think so now when we talk about the rest of your acronym, we can actually talk about where do we get the tools to feel that sense of empowerment, and what are all the things. And there's so much we can do. So, and you also brought to attention that we don't need to label ourselves as having something, because there's still so much. And the fact that you differentiated this with the bone quality, I think that just gave me a lot of hope, because I most often hear women feeling like it's a lost sense of hope when it comes to their bone health. So could you talk to us about the rest of the acronym? Because I do also want to get your thoughts on the link between someone who's perpetually sleep deprived. And Susan, it's not always the case that, yes, a large percentage of our audience is probably people struggling with sleep issues, but there's also people who don't think that ignoring sleep issues is a big deal and it's not going to have repercussions. They feel that they've got youth on their side and there's work waiting for them. But I think I would love for you to bring your attention to all of that.
Yeah. Well, let me just take a step back. So, you can be eating the best diet in the whole world, but if you're not digesting your food, if you're not absorbing your nutrients, you're not getting those nutrients to any cell in the body. And that's where the optimized digestion comes in. And I have to tell you, I think this is one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle that's missing when I look at other even holistic osteoporosis specialists, is they're not looking at what I call the gut system, which is the stomach, where we have to make enough hydrochloric acid and digestive enzymes to break down our food. And it's the hydrochloric acid in the stomach that it's called ionization, but basically what it does is it dissolves our minerals so that we can absorb them, like calcium, like magnesium. And as we age, we do not produce the same amount of hydrochloric acid in the stomach that when we did in our younger adult years. And then obviously being able to absorb these nutrients, and then having a healthy gut microbiome, which helps with absorption. So really making sure that, your digestive system is working adequately, to me, is so important. And so much information coming out these days about, the gut-brain connection, the gut-heart connection. And I actually coined the gut-bone connection because there is a huge body of evidence now that's showing that the gut microbiome is absolutely connected to the health of the bone. So you can't overlook that at all.
I love that, Susan, the gut bone connection, because no one's bringing attention to that. And you mentioned with age we lower HCl, but there's also so many people who are self prescribing antacids and proton pump inhibitors. And so this just, I mean, and I've seen someone who actually has come to a state of such severe bone degeneration that she's using a walking stick and been on antacids for I think about 3 years on a continuous basis. So I'm so glad you brought attention to that. Sorry to interrupt you in that.
No.
I just had to talk about that. It's such an alarming thing out there.
Yeah. Well, there's actually been studies that have connected long-term antacid use, proton pump inhibitors, and osteoporosis. So it's not me just saying that. And I have to say, being very holistic, I also come from a scientific background, and I want to make sure that what I say and what I do is also based in science. I want to see the research. If I'm going to tell you to go eat dandelions, there better be research that shows dandelions help build your bones. So I'm very, I would say my foundation is always the research and the science first. And so again, there is research showing that these long-term use of these antacids cause bone loss. So then the N in bone stands for nurture the soul. And, stress is a huge issue in society around the world. And when we're under chronic stress and we secrete all these high levels of cortisol, really problematic to every organ system in the body, including our bones. Cortisol is what we call a catabolic hormone, so it causes tissue breakdown and it causes your bones to break down. So, we're not going to get rid of stress. Everybody's under stress. But what you can do is find methods to help become more stress resilient and help to reduce stress. And so many of the mind-body activities are so important with that. The deep breathing, the meditation, the yoga, the mindfulness, all of that can be done as helping to reduce stress. And then I also think changing your mindset. To me, that's what helps me the most. I could have a tree fall on my roof and I could be like, oh my gosh, a tree fell on my roof, how horrible. Or I could say, wow, I need a new roof. So it's the way that you look at things that I think changes so much of how you react to whether it's a stress or maybe even a challenge. And I think the way you word things, you can have a bad day or you could have a challenging day, and just flipping the way that you look at things in life, I think can go a long way in helping to reduce stress. And then, of course, sleep. And sleep is essential for nurturing our souls. And most of us don't understand, though your audience might, the amazing benefits of sleep. Everything from living longer and enhancing your memory, warding off dementia and disease. Sleep is the foremost nourisher of our health, and we need sleep to nourish our bones. And when we don't get enough sleep or we get disrupted sleep, it can actually alter our bone metabolism and decrease formation of our bones. So again, when we're not getting enough sleep, it's actually stimulating those osteoclasts to remove new bones, and it's inhibiting those osteoblasts to lay down new bone. So, really, really important. And again, as Deepa, as you know, and your audience probably knows, when we sleep, that is when our body and our bones repair and rebuild themselves. And it's at night where, our bone cells are helping to regulate calcium levels in the body. They're helping to repair microscopic cracks in the bone. So every single day when we stress our bones, we get these little tiny cracks in our bones. But it's at night that the body repairs these. And when it repairs these cracks, the bones become stronger. Very similar to our muscles. When we are lifting heavy weights and we get that soreness, that's because the muscle tissue has actually broken down a little bit, and then the body repairs it, and when the body repairs it, it builds it stronger. So really, really important to get
And
that sleep at night.
And you also mentioned, Susan, to me at the very beginning, before our official conversation, that long term poor sleep has some impact on your
Yep.
tendency to develop some bone challenges. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about
Mhm.
that.
Right. So just as recently of November of 2019, there was research that came out that showed postmenopausal women who slept less than 5 hours a night were 22% more likely to have low bone mass or osteoporosis than those women who slept at least 7 hours a night. So, sleeping less than 5 hours, these women were more likely to have osteoporosis than those who got 7 hours. And so there were 28%, I believe, higher risk of osteoporosis in the spine, and 94% increased risk of osteoporosis throughout the body. So pretty interesting. But what I find even more interesting is sleeping longer than 8 hours didn't have any extra benefit, and actually has been associated with lower bone mineral density in a couple studies. So it seems like not sleeping enough, 5 hours or less, and sleeping too much can also be detrimental to the bones. And you wonder why, people that are sleeping 10, 12 hours, if it's detrimental to the bones because they're not up and weight bearing through the bones and things like that. I personally don't think it has anything to do with the actual sleep itself, but more of, if you're in bed, you're not up and standing and working and impacting the bones. So there does seem to be a sweet spot between 6 to 8 hours of sleep.
And I'm also wondering whether
These,
the time of sleep has anything to do with it, Susan. For example, someone who's sleeping, say, at 10 p.m. versus someone who's sleeping, say, from 1 in the morning, even if they get 6 to 8 hours, does the timing make a difference? Have you noticed anything in terms of circadian rhythms?
I haven't noticed that. And I do think that, you hear people say, oh, I'm a morning person or I'm a night owl. I think as long as you're going through those specific sleep stages, I think that's the important thing. And I haven't necessarily seen a difference between somebody that sleeps from 1 to 8 or somebody that sleeps from 10 to 6. I haven't necessarily seen that difference. I don't know. Have you seen a difference in the health of people if they are more night owls?
Yes, I mean, I just think it could very well be correlated more to the fact that people who sleep at 1 a.m. or who are night owls are probably also having correlative lifestyle habits that are probably more inflammatory. So I'm not sure if it has anything to do with the timing, but just the basics lifestyle overall based on these kind of timings. So I haven't actually looked deeper into that, but I'm just thinking aloud in terms of it could very well be more correlative to types of lifestyle.
Right. It also can be correlated to circadian rhythm, and our body is in tune with nature. And so, we're supposed to be, sleeping and resting when the sun goes down and then waking when the sun comes up. And it's that morning sun in our eyes that helps kind of just, bring the cortisol levels up. And I know cortisol, I was kind of ragging on before, but it's part of the circadian rhythm. We want that cortisol surge in the morning. That's what gives us that boost of energy to get our day going. And I can see where perhaps not getting that sunlight into your eyes and not getting that surge of cortisol in the morning until 9 or 10 kind of changes our circadian rhythm. So that very well may have something to do with it. And again, we should be in harmony with our nature and not fight against it.
Yes.
And actually, now that you bring that up, I'm pretty sure I remember seeing a study where people that worked night shifts had higher risk of osteoporosis than people that didn't. So that very well may happen.
And in fact, as you said about the biorhythm, it could also be correlated to vitamin D, because in Indian culture, it was always said that when babies are born and, the old ladies in the house would carry the baby out only for the early morning sunlight. So it might very well be that waking up to the sun at 7 a.m. versus 10 a.m. makes a world of difference to that. I'm just thinking, and I know we have still so much to talk about, so I'm going to stop interrupting you for a little while.
Well, I just think, unfortunately, as we get older, it does get harder and harder to sleep. And if you look at osteoporosis, being in postmenopausal women, as well as, as we age, the first thing that happens when we go through menopause and we get all of these erratic hormones is oftentimes people aren't getting sleep. They get insomnia, or women have, the hot flashes at night and they can't sleep. And then as we get older, we got to get up and pee 3 or 4 times a night. So we have disrupted sleep. So I do think it's harder and harder for, for us to get quality sleep as we age. And then, on top of that, we're not getting good quality sleep. We're tired, our balance is off, our coordination is off, and it leads to increased risk of falls. And in the end, if we want to prevent fractures, we need to prevent falls. And if somebody's waking up tired, or even in the middle of the night, getting up to pee for the 5th time, and they stumble going to the bathroom, then you're going to risk, falling and breaking a bone. So it has to do with so many different things, not only from making sure you're repairing the body and you're repairing the bones, but also making sure that you're getting adequate sleep so that, you do have a strong foundation of balance and coordination as well to prevent the falls and the fractures.
I loved all those little spaces your brain went to, Susan. There's so many things you're sparking in my head. But I do want to give you some time to speak about exercise and your smart supplementation, because I think that's so important for all of us. So just walk us through, because one of the things I've heard in terms of exercise with a lot of women is that sometimes they have some walks and then they feel it's enough. And then, I get a question that someone told me I need to do some strength work. Is it really necessary? I don't really enjoy it. So is there a specific form of exercise that we need in order to keep our bones healthy? So let's talk about that.
So, as an integrative nutritionist, obviously I feel that nutrition is really important. All of these are really important. But if I were to put my money on one thing, it would be exercise. Our bones need to be stressed. And when the bones are stressed, it helps the bone turnover and it helps laying down new bone. And we can stress our bones in 2 different ways. One is through what we call impact exercise. When our foot hits the ground, it helps, with energy that goes up the bone and causes the bone turnover, but also with the resistance exercise, when, we're lifting weights and our muscles contract, they also pull on the bones and cause bone turnover. And when I look at osteoporosis, I actually don't see it as a condition of the bones. I see it as a musculoskeletal condition. And your muscles are just as important to the health of that bone than the actual bone structure itself is. And so, yes, walking 30 minutes a day is not enough. And well, let me take a step back. It could be enough if you're a couch potato and you've never exercised before. Getting up and walking 30 minutes is fine. But at some point, your bones are going to accommodate to that exercise. They'll get this strong, but never any stronger. Same thing if you're lifting weights. If I'm lifting a 5-pound weight, maybe the first couple weeks I do it, my muscles get sore. But after a while, it'd be like, oh, I'm used to, building that, lifting that 5-pound weight. And it's going to say, okay, I can do that with no problem. But I can't lift 10 pounds or 20 pounds. I've only trained myself to lift 5 pounds. So you have to constantly be challenging your bones and challenging your muscles. And, again, walking for 30 minutes a day isn't enough. And again, it depends on what kind of walking. Are you, strolling and walking your dog in the morning where they're sniffing? Or are you out there power walking? And there's a big difference between those kind of walking. And then again, you absolutely have to do some kind of strength training. And there's been a lot of studies that show that people with better muscle mass have better bone. So, making sure that you are doing some kind of resistance training, and it can be weights, or it can be, what we call body weight exercises like lunges and push-ups and things. Or it could be using those bands, the TheraBands, the resistance bands, anything that's going to help to challenge the muscles and strengthen the muscles. Plus the fact that, making sure that you've got good muscle mass in your back, and your core is going to help to brace and stabilize and protect your spine. It's also going to help that, forward flexion that all these little old ladies have. If you keep your back healthy, it's going to keep that upright posture. And then you also need to do some kind of balance training, because again, we don't want people to fall. If you fall, you might fracture. So working every day on just, some simple little balance exercises. And like everything, our balance starts to deteriorate as we age as well. But you can train it, just like you can train your muscles. You can train your balance. So making sure that you're doing some sort of balance training is important.
And of course, Susan, as someone who's been teaching yoga for 2 decades, I'm going to give a shout out for yoga in terms of balance for sure, because there's so much to do with balance in yoga.
Yeah, so much. And then, and then just the smart supplementation, as we touched on before. Everybody's just like, oh, it's all about calcium and vitamin D, and it is not at all. And in fact, we've seen some studies coming out showing that postmenopausal women that take too much supplemental calcium have an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. And one of the reasons is because when they take that calcium, it gets into the bloodstream, but they're not taking the cofactors, the nutrients that help take that calcium out of the blood and put it into the bones, such as magnesium and vitamin K2. So, it's complicated. And that's where, somebody like me who can kind of look at the diet and say, okay, you're getting enough of this, you're not getting enough of that, is really important. And then I don't know about you in your practice, but there are many different functional testing that we can do to look at nutrient levels. And again, Deepa, you and I could have the same exact diet, but because we're metabolically different, my deficiencies are going to be completely different than your deficiencies. So really making, doing these extra tests to take a look at where the nutrient deficiencies lie I think is really important.
And
Because like I
Susan, I
said,
came across somebody, a postmenopausal lady who had such severely low levels of platelets, and she had been to several practitioners, and nobody had looked at that. And she said it's always been low. And usually that just points towards someone needing a K2 or just needing to increase something like the leafy greens, but actually no one had brought her attention to that. So she was always talking about pain in the joints, and it took such a simple thing to actually help her move past that. So I'm so glad you mentioned the unique aspect to each person and how each of us have those different forms of. But do you as a practitioner feel that all women in the premenopause or postmenopausal phase require some little bit of calcium? And if so, what would be a safe requirement dosage that women could take on their own?
yeah. So it depends. I don't want to say all women, because if somebody is getting, 800 milligrams of calcium, as well as the other nutrients, so magnesium, vitamin D, vitamin K2, manganese, all the other nutrients, and we do a nutrient test on them and their calcium levels are great, I wouldn't put them on calcium. But for women that are, need a little boost of calcium, again, I look at what's in their diet and then supplement to 1,000 milligrams. So if they're getting 700 milligrams in their diet, then I would supplement them with 300 milligrams of calcium. However, I would never give them calcium without giving them equal amounts of magnesium. So 1-to-1 calcium to magnesium, as well as K2, as well as vitamin D. Those would be, the four things that I think, well, and then one more, I do think that most people need to be on a fish oil or some kind of omega-3 fatty acid, whether it's fish or flax, because I think inflammation is so prevalent, and inflammation will cause issues in the bone. So those are the 5 that I would do. But again, your B vitamins are critical for your bones as well. So, it's just so much more than just calcium.
You took us through so much through all of those areas of your acronym, and we've already hit an hour, but I wish I could just go on and on talking with you, but I think I should respect your time. So is there anything final that you'd like to leave us with in terms of wrapping up bone health, or any specific recommendation for women themselves?
Well, again, I think, making sure that, you're eating what I call plant-focused diet. Digestion, I just can't stress how important digestion and a healthy gut microbiome is. And the sleep is really important. You've got to get down, to making sure that you're sleeping. And there are some really easy things you can do if you are just starting out trying to get more sleep, like getting the morning sunshine in your eyes, sticking to a consistent sleep schedule, going to bed at the same time, waking up the same time, getting rid of the technology at night. I mean, as you know, the blue light from these devices can throw off your circadian rhythm, which could be issues. Having some kind of a bedtime ritual is really important, and making your sleep environment conducive for sleep. So, making sure the temperature is right. I like to sleep at 67 degrees. Making sure it's dark. I just don't believe in TVs in the bedroom. The bedroom is made for 2 things: sleep and sex. That's it. So I'm just not a big fan of
Yes.
TVs in the bedroom.
Yes.
And then, But then diet too, making sure you're not taking in excessive excessive caffeine and sugary sweets at night can give you that burst of energy so you're not tired. So I do think that if you are a woman with osteoporosis suffering with sleep issues, there's a lot that can be done. And then there's just so many terrific different herbal remedies as well as minerals. Magnesium is very calming. Melatonin is great. And that's one thing that one of my go-tos all the time, because also as we age, we don't make as much melatonin as we did when we were younger. So really just looking into all of these different things to help us sleep. And then again, just a really important to look at the whole package. Everything affects our bones. And as I was telling you before, anything you do to help your bones is going to help your overall health, and anything you do to help your overall health is going to help your bones. And I don't see bones any different than any other system in the body.
Thanks, Susan. And of course, we have a mantra on our show, so I want you to complete it for us as well. So, in quotes, if sleep is the new medicine, then how would you complete that for us?
If sleep is the new medicine, again, I just feel like sleep is what nourishes our body, allows it to heal itself, and we just need sleep to nourish our bones and our body.
Awesome, Susan. So where can people find you if they want to get more information about bone health? Because I know that you have enlightened me in this 1 hour of our conversation, and I feel a little more reassured that there's great information out there when I want to find more detailed information to help or support my own clients when it comes to bone health. So where would you like to direct people?
So my website is nurturedbones.com. So NURTURED bones.com. And I actually have a gut bone connection webinar, which will be released probably by the end of the month. So if anybody's really the gut and the bones connect, it's a free webinar, and it would be really interesting for people who are sitting there saying, oh, I've got gut issues.
Thank you, Susan, for giving us your time today, and we got a wealth of information through your acronym BONES, and stay in touch. And I know that if anyone wants more great information, they're going to find you somewhere.
nurturedbones.com. And thank you, Deepa. It's been a pleasure and an honor to be on your podcast.
Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the show today. Just a reminder that this podcast is for information purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional care by a doctor or otherwise qualified health professional. This information is provided on the understanding that it does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. If you are looking for personal help on your health journey, do seek out a qualified professional. Please do make your own healthcare decisions based upon your research and in partnership with a qualified healthcare professional. It is in no way intended as medical advice or a treatment or cure for any condition. Be sure to always directly work with a qualified practitioner before making any changes to your diet or lifestyle that may feel out of your realm of comfort or understanding. If you are looking for an allied functional medicine practitioner, do seek out more information on www.phytothrive.com. It is important that you have someone who is qualified and understands your health personally in order to provide adequate care, especially when it comes to chronic health conditions. Be sure to subscribe to the Sleep Whisperer podcast on your favorite podcast app to get each episode as soon as it launches.